talking about matching the hatch. We're going to go over a little bit about the life cycles of bugs and why it's important to know a bit about the basics when you're fly fishing, or for that matter, any kind of fishing. So I'm sure a lot of you are asking, why would you want to learn about life cycles of insects when you're fishing? You know, when I started fishing, I used to just pick the prettiest fly in my tackle box and tie it to my rod and just hope for the best. And you know, I just wanted to get my line. I just wanted to get my line wet. But over the years, you know, I've done a little bit of research and experience, and you know, now when I arrive at the river, I'm always looking at my calendar, and you know, based on that research that I've done, and I stand around the river for a little bit and I kind of watch what's happening. I'm kind of looking for swarms of bugs or little bugs floating in the river. If I'm lucky, I'll see the trout kind of emerging and kind of get a sense of kind of what they're feeding on. But having that general knowledge of their life cycles really helps you kind of match the hatch, like I mentioned. The other way to do that, not just visually looking around, but is getting your feet wet, which is always fun to do too. Or you know, put on some chest waders, some hip waders, some rubber boots, and get inside the rivers. And what you'll find is you'll pick up some rocks and you'll look at the bottom, and you're going to find all these different little insects. Like this little stonefly here is going to be hanging on with his grippers and feeding off these rocks, and the trout just love feeding off these. It's kind of like the nymph stage of their life cycle. Caddisflies are another example, really cool. They collect debris and sticks, they make little casings around themselves, and they'll be hanging on the bottoms of these rocks as well. So many different little insects, you don't need to know them all, but you know, getting a general sense of the ones that the trout or whatever fish you're targeting are present in the river that you're fishing. So yeah, get your feet wet, looking around, being observant, using some books to kind of learn the basics of some insects that you might see. And of course, these days there's always like great apps that you can use as well, or great tutorial videos like this one. So just to go into the life cycles here, I'm just going to go into them like briefly. Like I say, you don't need to be an entomologist or anything, but just a general sense of what goes on at the river. So here we got your benthic layer, which is essentially just the ground where rocks and debris are, that little zone in between the ground and the rocks and debris. And like I mentioned with the rocks, this is where you're going to find that nymph stage. Some, like the stoneflies, are going to make their way over to the riverbanks and crawl up, and then they're going to go through their exoskeleton stage, their pupae stage. And this is where they're not available for the trout, but the stonefly, for example, are lousy flyers, and the trout really love this. They'll try to get to those shrubs or those sticks and those trees, but they're clumsy. If it's raining or windy, they end up in the water, and that's just potential for trout here to come in and get a free meal. Other insects like the caddisfly, for example, you'll also find in that benthic layer in the nymph stage. But what they like to do is they're going to come up in their exoskeletons, this little skin, this wrap around them, and they're going to float up to the surface, and then they're going to wiggle their butts and get out of that shell and fly away. The problem is, though, again, if it's windy and wet, or that, you know, they're just having trouble wiggling their butts out of their shells, that's creating all this little vibration. And this trout is, you know, I find the emergers, we call them, if you can match the hatch and match what's emerging, that's where the trout are they really love those free meals. And I think that extra little exoskeleton is like, you know, little side of fries to their meal. So that's when they love to come and feed, is on those emergers. So again, you have your nymph stage, and they're going to start to become adults. So they're going to get into that exoskeleton stage, and they're going to wiggle their butts out, and they're going to emerge with their wings, and they're going to fly. Like the mayflies, they're going to be in big swarms, or they're going to fly individually away, or like the lousy flyers of the stonefly, they're just going to be bumping into each other and falling back into the water. So just in basics, you know, knowing 3 or 4 flies that are in the bottom of this benthic layer and kind of understanding their cycles and the timing of their cycles, like in May or late April, early June, you know, when you're planning that fly fish, find out what should be kind of hatching around that time. And this is just going to give you better opportunities when you're fishing. Like I said, you can be an entomologist and a world-class fly fisherman, and you might just reach in your tackle box one day and grab the most pretty colorful fly that you just bought at the store because you want to try it out, and you'll find that works the best. So matching the hatch doesn't always work, but it's a great technique to use. And you know, even if you're not a fly fisherman, you know, hopefully you've learned something neat and something cool today. I always find nature neat. And I know the biggest thing I learned over the years fishing is that I'm not there for the fish. And it took me a while to realize that, but once I did, I just, you know, I love going out there and just seeing nature, being with nature, you know, learning all these little neat life cycles and insects out there. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for listening. Take care, everyone.
Whip it up and whip it up.